Morgan, Lostbelt. Morgan, Murugan, class name Berserker, Basaka, is a Berserker class servant be summoned by Ritsuka Fujimaru in the Grand Orders of Fate/Grand Order. The Lostbelt Queen who rules over Fairy Britain. She established an authoritarian monarchy in the Lostbelt Britain and has made the fairies suffer under her oppressive rule for 2,000 years. As the highest-ranking fairy, she is a genius sorcerer who has mastered Rangaminiad, the lance that shines to the ends of the world, as a form of magecraft. Morgan was created by the planet to be the savior of Britain. When she first manifested, she was originally named Vivian. She was taken in and raised by the Rain clan in Orkney. Her foster mother, the Rain clan leader, called her Tonelico. The Rain clan was massacred overnight by an alliance of the Wind, Earth, Fang, and Wing clans. They were killed for protecting the Fairy of Paradise. In fulfilling her role as savior, she used her childhood name as an alias. Her legends have continued into the Lostbelt's modern day. According to legend, Tonelico has appeared again and again under different names, such as Ector the Immortal, Archduke of Residual Heat Rhynek, Grim of the Wise, and the Knight of Beginnings, Todorot. In truth, these were Tonelico's companions. Morgan was originally created by the world to force the fairies of Britain to repent and complete their duty of forging the holy sword via Avalon Le Fay. After being betrayed too many times during her various attempts to save Britain, Morgan decided to dominate Britain instead. In response to her failure, the planet created a new fairy, Artoria, to fulfill Morgan's old mission. Thousands of years ago, she had received the memories of her proper human history counterpart, who Beryl had summoned when he first arrived in the Lostbelt, and she ray-shifted her memories back in time, and had used them to change the Lostbelt's history such that it would create a world for her to rule. This was one of the causes for Morgan refusing to complete her duty to forge Excalibur, as this would mean the denial of the Lostbelt's existence and therefore the end of the Britain that she loved and wished to preserve. One of the incidents Tonelico saved Britain from was the Summer War 4,000 years ago, a war between the fairies of the south and the fairies of the north led by Mab. After the end of the Summer War, the fairies established the system of clans that they still use today. Morgan plans to use the magical energy of the Great Calamity to destroy proper history and turn the entire world into Fairy Britain. This will kill all the fairies outside her Camelot as well, but new fairies will always be born. She cares not for the people of Britain, only for her kingdom itself. Appearance. When she was young and went by the alias Tonelico, she looked exactly like Artoria Castor but with a black bow. This is because fairies who have the same purpose are born with the same appearance. Personality. A ruthless queen who relies only on her own power. It isn't that she doesn't trust others, but rather she finds them unreliable. She sets first and foremost the orderly rule of Britain. She hates people, fairies, the weak, the ugly, equality, peace, and is the embodiment of evil as perceived by the masses. However, hate does not mean unwanted, rather it only means incompatible with each other. For Morgan, justice is the state of ruling and evil is the state of someone interfering with her rule. Thus, Morgan's own likes and dislikes are irrelevant to good and evil as a ruler. If something is necessary to rule, she will accept and tolerate it even if she dislikes it. The extremity and authority of her standards are like those of a heartless machine. That being said, Morgan, too, has a heart. Joy, sadness, hate, anger, love, and infatuation, she just doesn't feel them as strongly as she used to anymore. After years of devoting herself to defending Britain, Morgan's heart has grown cold. The only passion that lit within her a wish that her past self continued to crave. Ruling Britain is the only goal that continues to drive her. Throughout her long journey, she was reminded that this was not a human-like dream from her childhood, but that this is just how she was born. The Morgan of proper human history was lecherous, cruel, and selfish, a true model of vice, but this Morgan has eliminated those traits and has become a talented woman who has lost her way. A frustrated beauty who is contemplative of her country. The pleasures of sex, the excitement of inflicting pain onto others, and self-absorbed joy are all boring. I've already grown weary of those matters, so says Morgan. However, since she is only keeping low, it is possible that her former brutality and bad taste will return if she finds herself in a situation or predicament where she is pushed to the brink. Morgan has adopted Beoban Sith as her daughter, but she only ever praises her when Beoban Sith torments the weak. However, she genuinely cares for Beoban. She secretly inherited all the memories of the proper human history Morgan through the machinations of the latter, and with them the knowledge that within the Lostbelt she could rewrite Britain's history so she could succeed in ruling Britain where her proper human history self failed. Being the ruler of Britain is her whole existence, and without it she believes that she would be worthless. Though once she used to be a kind queen ruling alongside Uther, repeated betrayals and rebellions have long since left her bitter and disillusioned. As such, she is convinced that only by ruling the Lostbelt as a tyrant can she keep Britain from being destroyed, either unaware of the fact that Britain's savior was never meant to rule Britain at all and that her kingdom could only be saved through its unmaking, or simply unwilling to accept it lest she be forced to destroy the country she loves. When summoned, she regards her master as her husband/wife, a position she defines as being that of total dedication and servitude towards her. She agrees to aid Chaldea when summoned by Ritsuka Fujimaru, but adds that she will always hate proper human history. Despite this, she eventually admits that she has become fond of Ritsuka over time and views them as her spouse in earnest. Abilities. As the highest-ranking fairy, Morgan is a genius sorcerer who has mastered the sphere of the End Rangaminiad as a form of magecraft. According to Beryl, as Olympus' fantasy tree was brought to end by Kirchteria's hand and Britain's fantasy tree was drained by the king of the Britain Lostbelt, that means that there is no longer a vessel suitable for the alien god's descent, and thus right now, Morgan is the strongest being on this planet. Upon seeing her transcendent great magecraft akin to divine punishment being unleashed from her Lostbelt to reach the far-removed Olympus, Chaldea desired to obtain it in order to counter the alien god whose planetary-class magical output is second only to Goetia. According to Shaun, since the Black Beryl may not be able to kill the alien god, fighting her would be a battle of pure energy. If the alien god has an output of planetary class, they would need a weapon of the same class. The divine construct and magecraft Rangaminiad wielded by Morgan, as a mystery that surpasses the ideal magecraft of Kirchteria, and something that comes not from man but a magecraft woven as of the inner sea of the planet, would be a counter against the alien god's planetary magical output that Chaldea desperately needs. For that, they would need either that Morgan share with them the theory or the mystic code that makes such magecraft possible. Her attack animation shows off some of her arsenal of maleficium, which includes turning herself into a living voodoo doll to skewer her opponent using her own body, draining the mana out of her enemies, a maelstrom of darkness, and crushing her enemies' hearts into a bloody pulp from a gesture. She is able to create projections of herself, called thought form. Rather than familiars constructed through magecraft, they are alter ego on the same standing as Morgan herself. She is able to understand the thaumaturgical foundation that Chaldea uses, the quantum magical foundation, with a single glare and refine it further, giving to Fujimaru 100 millions of quantum pieces. She can give someone the knowledge of the current state of her kingdom by letting them drink her water of conveyance, Dentatsu no Mizu, which contains the record of the last 200 years of the fairy kingdom. She has a magical dagger, which is what she used to kill Woodwose as he was transforming into a moss. She can also perform magical plastic surgery on the fly, which she used as Tonelico to create a decoy while she made her escape. After the truth about the British Lostbelt was revealed, Morgan was also shown to possess the ability to magically create perfect clones of individuals, having killed the original Beryl Gut in order to remove the only other being that remembered the original blank state of the Lostbelt and made a copy of him that didn't have those memories to avoid tainting her new kingdom. Beryl himself was unable to tell that he was a copy until he began to think about inconsistencies and implications of Morgan's ray shifting. Morgan has the ability to alter true names, as seen with imbuing the fairy knights with the essence, the Saint Graph, of proper human history's Knights of the Round Table, granting them their abilities and noble phantasms. All of them are immune to the moss thanks to their gifted names, making them one of the few capable fighting moss in the Lostbelt. She is able to inscribe fairies with command spells to drain them of their magical energy once a year. It's basically their magical energy and vitality. Half of their life force is collected every year and none of the fairies can stand against her. Fairies who fail to amass enough magical energy over the course of a year to satisfy her die on the spot. An oppressive regime will give rise to forces of opposition. The fact that Britain has remained under Morgan's control for 2,000 years just shows how powerful she is. Even if the fairies are dissatisfied with Morgan, since she has magical energy that extends beyond magic strong enough to cover all of Britain and 3 fairy knights, most wouldn't go as far as joining protestations against her. According to Aurora, even she, the leader of the Wind Clan, can't defeat Morgan face to face. They all live and die at her mercy, and according to the prophecy Ainsel left behind, only the child of prophecy who has not yet appeared can defeat her. According to Habitrot, after ringing the first pilgrim bell, just in terms of magical energy, Artoria Castor is probably equal to one of Morgan's fingers. When arriving at Camelot, Habitrot stated that the mana in the air is incomparable with the other cities. It's the magical energy that she gathered from fairies throughout Britain, and although she heard about it, the amount is simply ridiculous. It doesn't matter if they ignore Nocneria's army, they could never match this. It's insane to even think of defeating Morgan. Her throne has enough magical energy stored in it to the point Morgan feels no need to fear the great calamity, and only the chosen, Morgan and Artoria, can control the throne. According to Da Vinci, in her atrium overlooking the Great Pit, she was able to observe magical energy patterns similar to the Lion King in the Sixth Singularity as proof that Rangaminiad is definitely being prepared as a weapon. But not just one or two, there are over 10 Rangaminiads installed in front of Camelot's castle. As such, Da Vinci thinks that the Rangaminiad used on Olympus was just another use of it as far as Morgan is concerned. If that's the case, it would have been enough for Chaldea to use it as a counter against the alien god, if she could at least sell them a single one. In fact, it is later stated by Beryl that there are 12 Rangaminiads situated on Camelot's main gate. As stated by Beryl, not only does she have 12 Rangaminiads able to perform transcendent great magecraft akin to divine punishment and infinity mirror that perform great transference magecraft akin to true magic, the great bounded field, the tower that covers Britain, is also her doing. She also imprisoned Merlin even in this Lostbelt, in the great bounded field called the Garden. A magecraft of the Age of Gods unable to be handled by anyone but the embodiment of mystery. And on top of that, she performed race shifting without a coffin, something Chaldea has never been able to do. Nobody would have thought that she would dispatch the calamity to so long ago, and push her debt into the past. For Beryl, with all of this taken into consideration, she is more than enough all by herself. Having fairy knights just make her super broken. Despite having 12 Rangaminiads, Morgan never used them a single time in Britain. No one in Britain has witnessed the light of Rangaminiad, nor is there a single trace of its use in Britain. She had subjugated Britain with her own might alone. According to Ku Chulainn, Morgan has never been outmatched before. Though according to Morgan herself, up to now, only Queen Mab was able to deal a fatal blow to her. Fairy Knight Lancelot states that Barghest and her enlarged body aside, Morgan is the only one who can contend with her in her ability to fight in the air. In a single night, Morgan by herself killed all the Queen's knights, all of whom are peerless warriors and not as great as the fairy knights, in the land that didn't answer her summons. She didn't summon her knights against the rebels for their strength, but to offer them a chance to prove their loyalty. She alone would suffice against the rebels who are no more troublesome than the Eight Calamity. While Habitrot states Artoria's Saint Graph after ringing all the bells is now a match for Morgan as far as she can tell, Morgan calls the Child of Prophecy pitiful. Even if Artoria rang all the pilgrims' bells, Morgan already accomplished the same many times. With just a single pilgrimage, Artoria won't measure to even an ounce of Morgan's power. According to Oberon, setting up a war against the likes of Morgan wouldn't work. If she were to be defeated, it would be through assassination. Troop strength is meaningless as Morgan alone, with her though forms, outmatches the entire military might of Britain. From the very start, she could slaughter the rebels without moving from her throne. Because of that ability, a loss against Morgan would still be preferable than a victory. A victory would be the worst scenario, as the winner would have lowered their guard. The battle against Morgan would continue until her throne is reached. With her magecraft and thought forms, she doesn't hesitate to mercilessly scorch Camelot while walling off all retreat. Even if one were to flee into the buildings, she would set the city ablaze alongside the rebels. A suicidal counter-attack against her would only lead to a one-sided slaughter. According to Ku Chulainn, no matter where, no matter who she's up against, as soon as Morgan joins the battle, causalities ensue. It's merely a question as to whatever it'll be Morgan or her enemy. She's a woman of steel who won't stop until either she or her enemy is dead. Morgan is no queen. She is the Witch of Britain, the incarnation of death that torments, scorns, and reaps the fairies. Chaldean, as someone who once stood in her place, applauds her on how she brought this all about and praises her. She saw through the role of the fantasy tree, and instead of fearing it, she decided to make use of it. She wasted no time analyzing Chaldea's summoning formula, and then used it on her own blood. A masterful accomplishment, true to what they said about her as a genius whose magecraft approaches the divine. At this point, even if he interfered, the outcome will not change. Even should her lost belt be seized, it is 2,000 years too late. From his point of view, neither the Child of Prophecy, nor the Master of Chaldea has a chance of victory against her. Although a third party has yet to appear on the board. Due to this, the story may change if there are other factors at play. Water Mirror. She possesses a powerful magecraft ritual called the Water Mirror, also called Infinity Mirror or Opposing Mirrors, Away's Kagami. According to Habitrot, Transference Magecraft is her forte, the one at Norwich is just on a much grander scale. It first appears as a gathering storm clouds that swirl in the sky of Norwich for several days or weeks. At the morning of the day of its activation, it starts to give off a tremendous amount of magical energy. Oberon stated that if we likened it to pure fuel, it would be enough to burn all of Norwich to the ground. From Da Vinci's measurement, that amount of magical energy is equal to a supersized nuclear reactor core. Although not on the level of the machine gods of Olympus, in Chaldea terms, that would be the equivalent of 2 months of electricity used, an amount of the same scale of the Singularity Restoration ray shifting. Being informed that she was able to perform such a large-scale transference magecraft from somewhere over 100 kilometers away, Gordolf Music states that Morgan is terribly strong, and that she could hold her own against any of the previous Lostbelt kings that Chaldea had faced up to Lostbelt 6. Once the water mirror is activated, the sky seems to turn into still water. A bolt of lightning shoots down from the water and sends its target back in time. Oberon suspects the true purpose of this spell was to capture calamities so Morgan can take their magical energy. She'll use that magical energy to turn all of proper human history into her own territory. Using a curse to destroy a world of fairies, she will destroy the world of humans. Even by seeing Fairy Knight Tristan, using one of the infinity mirrors that Morgan gave her to move freely is enough to impress Beryl. In fact, Morgan's infinity mirror is much like true magic. The people of proper human history couldn't move so easily. The only one who could do that are the witches left in the dust by the ages. For him, that alone is worth respecting. The fairies don't get how truly horrifying Morgan is. In their hearts, they're laughing at her as a fairy who can't perform sacraments without using magecraft. If he had to say, it's the other way around. She's a cheating monster that can use magecraft on top being a fairy. That transference magecraft feats with the infinity mirror could be called shifting between dimensional connections itself, by connecting a parent mirror with a number of child ones. Spear of Selection. As Tonelico in the previous generation of Artoria Caster, on top of having the grand thaumaturgy of the opposing mirrors that she embarked to the eastern shore, Morgan possessed the Spear of Selection. A ritual tool of selection from her homeland that washed ashore with her. She would use that spear during her many attempts to save Fairy Britain. While the garden was a bounded field to lock up incubi, the spear was to punish fairies. Both were Tonelico's super move. It used to be Tonelico's Staff of Selection, but her sorrow at her failures transformed the staff into the Spear of Selection. However, since the spear became corrupted by her feelings, she sealed it. The strength of the spear didn't change, but a limiter popped off that made the charging function all wonky. It now draws the lifespan of its wielder instead of its magical energy. According to Artoria Caster, she get the same feeling as her Staff of Selection from it, but it has no substance anymore. The spear is amazing, but she feels like it's not chosen anymore. Percival himself feels the same, and when he uses it, a strong feeling of sadness and regrets flows into him and rip his body. The lamentations in the spear pour out as magical energy, and shine like tears when it's swung. That's why it's called White Light. This spear has become an existence by which fairies are delivered, to an existence by which fairies are defeated. Skills. Class skills. Mad Enhancement, B rank, is the class skill that characterizes a berserker, raising basic parameters and strengthens one's physical abilities in exchange of hindering mental capacities and/or in exchange for their sense of reason. In some cases, it also affects and/or seals away some techniques, personal skills, and noble phantasms. Magic Resistance, a rank grants protection against magical effects. Differing from the resistance effect that merely rejects magical energy, this ability cancels the spells altogether. Item Construction, EX rank, is a caster class skill. It is the skill to manufacture magical items, from implements of war to items for daily use. Also, this skill requires time to gather components and manufacture items. Territory Creation, B rank, is a caster class skill. It is the skill to build a special terrain that is advantageous to oneself as a magus, such as for the purpose of collecting mana. Fairy Eyes, a rank, she possesses a set of fairy eyes that allows her to see through lies due to her nature as a fairy. Personal skills. Thirsting Charisma, B rank, the power of a ruler who, through several failures, disappointments, and despair, has decided to rule her people with fear. Protection of the Lake, C rank, a blessing from the fairies of the lake. The rank has been lowered due to wandering too much. From the ends of the world, a rank, the pride of a queen who has risen from the brink of death many times, reached the farthest island, and returned to Britain. A skill that the regular Morgan does not possess, only the Lostbelt King Morgan. A powerful vortex of curses that can turn the tides of the battlefield. The embodiment of a winter storm. Noble phantasm. Lordless Camelot. Lordless Camelot, the now unreachable utopia, Heia Todoritsuken Risokairodorisu Kaimarato, is the noble phantasm of Morgan. The White Castle Camelot that Morgan wished to enter during her lifetime, but was unable to. A rule of the world, rather, Morgan was not allowed to become King of Britain for the sake of humanity. A twisted desire for control and privilege. A burning feeling of anger directed towards humans. And her hatred for Artoria, who sat on Camelot's throne even though she was the same type of being, caused Morgan to become the one who would bring ruin to the Round Table. This is her existence as a being brought forth by magecraft. It is her way to instantly travel on the path that could never be reached and destroy it. She is not meant to defeat King Arthur. A destiny to destroy the fairies of Britain for the sake of humanity. In order to overthrow human logic itself, she has returned from the farthest reaches and become a witch who curses the world.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.